So, to be honest, when I heard about the plot diagram and like it was explained to me, I kind of felt like my whole life I was being manipulated by the movie makers and the story writers. It's totally like a template. They just like know how to toy with my human emotion. And basically, the plot diagram looks like this. It's like, okay, flat line. It comes up, and then there's a key moment here, and then you have this situation here. And so they have actual like defined moments here. 3, 4, 5. And it's crazy if you actually learn this. Pretty much every story follows this. Again, I felt cheated, frankly. I felt like these people like know how to get to me and they're just using me. I'm such a simple human being. But nonetheless, this is how it works, okay? Here you have these key points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is like, I don't care, Star Wars, Harry Potter, any movie in Hollywood blended. Every story I've ever seen basically pretty much follows this. You have, number one is what they call the exposition. And actually, the exposition is, I would just call it an introduction if it was up to me. I'm coming from the math and science world, but exposition is basically the introduction, right? Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. I want to know everything off the top of my head. And this is where, like, you kind of, you start the story, you introduce all the characters, and you really start to sort of see the setting, of course. You also introduce the setting, like, when is it, and what country maybe, and what time in history, or is it in the future, is it in space? And then you also start to develop, like, you start to understand the conflict almost right away here at the exposition point. Like Harry Potter, the setting. You got some kid living in a home, Harry Potter 1, maybe doesn't appreciate his little wizardry skills. And so, and you know roughly when it is. They all have a British accent, so you're getting a feel for maybe where it is. And also in the exposition, you start to see a problem, that he's got these special powers and that people don't like it. So that's the exposition or introduction. 2 is what's called the rising events, okay? Rising events. And then what the rising events is, that's usually like the bulk of the whole movie. Things start to escalate, the problems start to escalate, you start seeing all this tension, and the story really heats up. And again, this is like, if a movie's 2 hours, this could be an hour and a half of the movie. And I'm not a Harry Potter expert, but like, rising events, he goes off to his little nerd school, and then the conflicts continue, and the school's divided between a little white-haired kid that's mean and Harry Potter's nice, whatever. So here's your rising events, and then you get to what's called the climax. And really, every single movie, story, book has this climax, which is the pivotal moment of the whole story where everything flips, right? And let me make some key points. Rising events, you have your, we said the conflicts develop, but the climax is the turning point. And what's weird is usually during the climax, not only does the main character, defeat some enemy, or he wins some championship, or, in the case of Star Wars, he's sword fights it out with his dad, apparently. But also in the climax, typically the character themselves change, right? And so, in the case of Harry Potter, maybe when you say he changes at the climax, maybe he develops sort of some sense of self-confidence now that he didn't have prior, or whatever. So not only is there typically like a big event or big victory or big battle, you also see a big, a fundamental change in the main character if it's a well-written story. So then you have 4, which is the falling action, right? And the falling action is when, so basically, they're talking about things, you tie up all the loose ends, right? All the loose ends are tied up. The conflict is essentially taken care of. Bad guys are put in their place. The good guys are now dominant and they've established and they're the winners, right? So the falling action, you tie up the loose ends. And now, so when you get to number 5 here, this is called the resolution, right? Which of course is the ending. And they usually want some kind of a reasonable ending, something that we can all maybe understand. And, if it's a Disney movie, they say the resolution would be, and they all lived happily ever after, right? That's one. The other thing about a resolution is that if there's not every story has a moral, but if there is some moral, this is kind of where the reader is really, or the viewer of a movie is taught that lesson. You see, it's not good to sell out your best friends. Or you see, it's good to be brave even in a circumstance in which you're nervous, whatever. This is kind of where the little finishing end comes. We get closure, then we understand where things are headed once we close the book, and that is the resolution. And so here you have your 5 parts to a plot diagram. And again, I'm upset. I think we should confront the people that have been pulling at our heartstrings and totally, you could see how this template could be mastered, and you could be cranking out Disney stories left and right based on this same template, or any Hollywood movies. I think Adam Sandler just has a template. Every one of his stories follows the same thing. But it actually, to be honest, I'm glad they do, because it does make for a great story, and it does make sense. So this is a plot diagram. Remember, if you're having a hard time at your local high school with your English class, you can take this online at Silicon Valley High School, pass it there, and the credits will be transferred back to you.